He looked just like a homeless man, lost in the rain, until she brought him a lunchbox, and her life took a completely different turn. She had no idea the quiet man she had just helped was actually a missing tech millionaire. But before we dive in, let us ask you something real quick. Where in the world are you listening from? And what time of day do you usually tune in? Who knows? Maybe you've got a surprise love story of your own to share? Drop a comment below. We'd love to hear more about you. And don't forget to support us with a channel subscription. Every bit of support means the world to us. Now, let's get into what really happened. She couldn't remember how many streets she'd walked to get here. All she knew was that by the time she stepped into the little roadside diner, her old shoes were soaked through with rain. Her hair was tied back in a rush, her jacket worn at the shoulders, and her hands still smelled faintly of dish soap. Everything about her said one thing: Lena had had a long day, just like every other. The diner was quiet. Rain tapped steadily against the windows. The owner was counting up the last of the day's orders. Lena had just taken off her apron when she heard a faint clattering sound outside the glass. A figure was huddled under the eaves, arms wrapped tightly around their knees. She couldn't see the face, only a mud-stained, faded hoodie. Lena hesitated. Her eyes flicked to the clock. 10:47. The wind was biting, her chest tightened. It wasn't the first time she'd seen a homeless person around here, but this time, something stopped her from walking away. "Lena, heading out?" the owner called from inside. "Yeah, I'm going now," she replied quickly, then stepped outside, holding a leftover meal she hadn't touched. The stranger looked up at the sound of footsteps. A young face, deep, tired eyes, but not defeated. "Hey, you hungry?" Lena said softly, holding the meal toward him. He looked at her for a few seconds, then gave a small nod. "Thank you." His voice wasn't hoarse like she'd expected. It was low and warm, a little out of sync with his messy, worn-out appearance. She sat down beside him, more instinct than decision. Rain whispered steadily on the awning above. He opened the meal box and murmured, "Smells really good." "Fried chicken and rice? A customer left it behind," Lena said with a soft smile, "but it's still perfectly fine." He nodded. "I'm Elliot." "Lena." A short pause passed. The rain grew heavier. Wind blew under the awning, making her shiver. "Do you live far?" he asked. She let out a soft laugh. "Tiny rental 3 blocks from here. What about you?" "I don't really have a place right now," he said, like it was no big deal. Silence. Not awkward, just quiet. She glanced at his hands, thin but clean, not like the ones she'd seen on other homeless people before. A clap of thunder rolled through the air. Lena jumped, startled. Rain started to spray in from the side of the awning. She looked at Elliot, shoulders hunched, hoodie soaked and thin. "Come with me." He frowned, confused. "To my place. Staying here's just gonna make you sick." He stood still for a moment. "You don't know who I am. I don't know half the people I work with either, but they still eat lunch next to me every day." That made him laugh, short and quiet. "Just one night," she added, her voice firmer. "You can go wherever you want in the morning." He nodded. On the way back, rain poured down in sheets. They jogged through alleys, steps uneven. Lena unlocked the door to her tiny room, barely 270 square feet, but warm enough. She pointed to the far corner, where a single mattress, a pillow, and a thin blanket waited. "Sleep there. Don't go through my stuff. Bathroom's on the left. I don't have a lock." "You trust me?" "No, but I'm too tired to care." She turned away, kicked off her shoes, towel-dried her hair, and crawled under her blanket. He stayed by the door, dripping wet, his face caught somewhere between gratitude and hesitation. "Wear the shirt I hung over there, and don't get the mattress wet," her voice called out from behind the curtain. Elliot changed shirts and stepped quietly to the mattress. The room was still, filled only with the sound of rain. He sat down, careful, like he might break something fragile. Then a voice came from under the blanket. "You don't really seem homeless." Elliot glanced toward her, but she didn't look back. "Just a feeling," Lena added, barely above a whisper. He didn't answer, but something flickered across his face, like a smile that didn't quite form. Rain kept falling. The night stayed quiet, and in that tiny room 2 strangers lay just a few steps apart, yet somehow that space felt like the beginning of something. Lena didn't sleep deeply that night, not because she was afraid, but because everything felt different. The room, usually used to her quiet routines, now held another breath, another rustle in the dark, and a presence that made the air feel heavier, and at times, strangely warmer. She woke up in the middle of the night and turned her head slightly. Elliot was facing the wall, one hand resting loosely on his stomach. The blanket she gave him pushed halfway down. She almost sat up to pull it back over him, then stopped herself. She didn't know why, but the gesture felt too intimate, for someone she'd only met a few hours ago. The next morning, Lena woke up early. She stretched and got ready to heat up some old bread in the kitchen, but then froze. The kitchen was spotless. Dishes were washed and neatly stacked on the rack. The stove had been wiped down, and even the oven door gleamed. Elliot was sitting at the table, flipping through her notebook where she tracked her expenses, eyes focused. He looked up when he noticed her. "Good morning," he said, then pointed toward the kitchen. "I saw rice, eggs, and some veggies. I made a bit of fried rice. Want to try some?" Lena frowned. "You cooked?" "Just basic survival skills," Elliot replied, smiling slightly. She looked at him. Her old t-shirt was a bit tight across his shoulders, but he wore it neatly, sleeves folded evenly. His hair, though clearly overdue for a trim, was combed back cleanly with what she realized was her facial cleanser. A light, fresh scent lingered in the air, the soap she kept by the sink. She'd never even used it herself. "You used my face wash as hair gel?" "Surprisingly effective," he shrugged, completely deadpan. Lena laughed, not loudly, but with surprise and a touch of warmth. She sat down at the table. 2 bowls, 2 pairs of chopsticks were neatly set, and the plate of fried rice looked almost restaurant-worthy. Even the cilantro was evenly sprinkled on top. "Were you a chef or something?" she asked, half joking. "No, but I used to cook for someone really picky. Took a while to get the hang of it." "Girlfriend?" "Grandma," he answered, dead serious. She laughed again, partly because of his answer, partly because she still couldn't figure him out. Breakfast passed quietly. She noticed Elliot ate very slowly, not in the way people do when they've gone hungry, but with intention. He chewed thoroughly, made no noise, and kept his elbows tucked in. The kind of habits that come from being taught well. After breakfast, he took the initiative to gather the dishes. Before Lena could even react, he was already at the sink, moving with such ease and precision that she suddenly felt a bit self-conscious. She sat and watched, her eyes unconsciously lingering on his posture. Upright, steady, confident. Not at all like someone adrift or homeless. "Where'd you learn to wash dishes like a pro?" she called out from the table. "Worked in a dorm cafeteria for a while. They even checked how you wipe the spoons." "You went to college?" Elliot didn't turn around. "I studied something else. But yeah, I was in a place they called a school." The answer caught her off guard. It was vague, almost like a challenge. That afternoon, Lena had a shift at work. Before she left, she gave him a list of rules like she was talking to a kid. "Don't touch the laptop, don't go through the drawers, and don't leave the fridge open too long. It wastes electricity." Elliot nodded seriously. "I'll do my best to maintain the stability of your energy system." "Don't get too clever. This place can't handle it," she replied with a smile. At the door, she glanced back for a moment. He was standing in the middle of the small room, cloth in hand, one eye squinting as he tried to straighten a crooked bookshelf. She looked at him for a few more seconds, then quietly closed the door. That night, when Lena got home, she thought she'd walked into the wrong place. The room felt unfamiliar. All the books had been rearranged by cover color. The ones with bent spines were flattened out. The wobbly wooden chair, broken since last month, had been reinforced. The towel hook that always fell off was screwed in tight, and the fridge no longer made that loud, sputtering hum like a lawnmower. "You fixed the fridge?" she asked as Elliot stepped out of the kitchen, holding a pot of hot tea. "I just tightened a loose screw and added a little padding underneath," Elliot said. Lena set her bag down and put her hands on her hips. "You're making me feel bad, you know that?" "Why?" "I've lived here 3 years and haven't done a third of what you did." Elliot smiled. "You're busy living. I'm just passing through." And in that moment, for some reason, Lena felt her heart squeeze a little. He didn't look at her when he said it, but his words landed right where her guard was down. She turned away, hiding her eyes. That night, they drank tea. No music, no TV. Just two people, each on one side of a wooden table, and between them, a silence that wasn't uncomfortable. When Lena got up to clear the cups, her hand brushed against his. No one said anything, but the air paused for half a second. And in that half second, her heart skipped. It wasn't because he was handsome, and it wasn't because he was kind. There was just something about Elliot, something that made her feel seen, really seen. Not idealized, not pitied, just understood. And for a fleeting moment, Lena found herself wondering, who is this man, really? Saturday morning came with more sun than usual. Light slipped through the cracks in the door, casting soft shadows on the old curtains and making her small room look a little less gloomy than normal. She let out a long yawn, eyes still burning from her late shift the night before. Outside, she heard the soft clatter of kitchenware. She sat up groggily, wandered out, and froze. Elliot stood with his back to her, stirring eggs in a pan. On the table, toast, a plate of fresh fruit, and hand-brewed coffee. "You? How long have you been up?" she asked, still half asleep. Elliot turned around, smiling. "Right around the time you were dreaming about yelling at your boss." Lena's face flushed. "I was talking in my sleep. Not too loud, but loud enough for me to know your boss probably needs therapy." She laughed, grabbing the coffee cup and taking a deep inhale. The aroma was different, richer than the instant stuff she usually drank. "Where'd you get this?" Found a bag of whole beans under the cabinet, and a grinder buried under 3 layers of dust. "I bought that thing thinking I'd live with taste. Then life got busy, so I just lived however." "Well," he said, "today we live with a little taste." The air felt light, like early morning sunlight. No tension, no awkwardness. Just a simple morning. Yet Lena couldn't remember the last time she'd felt this at ease. And just like that, the days started slipping by faster than she expected. At first, Elliot said he'd stay just a few days. But a few days turned into a week, then 2. Lena didn't keep track. She only started noticing the small things. 2 mugs side by side every morning, 2 pairs of slippers scattered by the door, and 2 people doing dishes together. One washing, one drying, in quiet, unhurried evenings. He never intruded on her space. Yet somehow, he was everywhere. Gently, naturally, like the room had always been waiting for him to show up. They didn't talk much about the past, but they talked a lot about the present. They talked about how Lena once dreamed of becoming a literature teacher, but had to drop out because her family ran out of money. About how Elliot used to love reading sci-fi novels, but had a fear of heights. About why she had cat posters in the bathroom, and why he knew how to mend a torn sleeve without a proper sewing kit. "My mom used to sew clothes for patients who couldn't afford new ones," he said, fingers moving quickly. "I learned by watching her. I'm best at fixing tears on shoulders. Poor kids all always seem to rip their shirts there." "You were a good student too, weren't you?" Lena asked. "More or less. I saw that advanced calculus book on the shelf. It's full of pencil notes in your handwriting." Elliot looked at her but didn't answer. As usual, his eyes were calm, but impossibly deep. One night, Lena opened her laptop to update her job application. The thing ran painfully slow, Word just kept spinning, refusing to load. She groaned, slammed it shut, and muttered, "Guess it's finally dead." Elliot was reading nearby. He looked up. "Can I take a look? Only if you promise not to laugh at how many typos I've got." "Never," he said, holding up his hand like an oath. 15 minutes later, the laptop was running like new. And her CV? It wasn't just cleaned up with fresh fonts and tidy margins. He'd added new sections: customer communication skills, time management under pressure. She blinked. "You do know I'm just a waitress, right?" "And you do more than you think. Smart people aren't the ones who know everything. They're the ones who make the most out of very little." Lena turned away, pretending to look for the power cord, but her hand shook slightly. "Hey." That one word, "hey," the way he said it made her heart stutter. "Yeah?" "I'm leaving tomorrow." She stood up straight and turned to face him. He was still seated, but avoided her gaze. "I don't think it's right for me to stay any longer," he said. "Right or wrong, according to who? As you gave me a place to sleep, I cooked meals, but I'm not a friend, not family." "You could be a friend, Lena? Or are you just scared?" She cut in, her voice catching slightly. Elliot looked up, their eyes met, and in that moment, she didn't just see hesitation in his expression, she saw something that looked a lot like fear. "Scared of what?" he asked. I don't know, maybe the feeling of staying somewhere too long and then accidentally wanting to stay for real. Elliot stood and took a step closer. The space between them was now less than an arm's length. The air felt still, like it was holding its breath. You should be careful with people like me, he said softly. I've never met anyone like you. That's exactly why. Their voices quieted, like they were afraid of breaking something fragile. Lena stepped back half a step, then stopped. A brief silence, just long enough for her to realize she wasn't the only one moving through this space anymore. And maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't be walking through life alone much longer either. Sunday noon, the sky was overcast. Lena finally got around to cleaning her desk, a task she'd been putting off for 3 weeks. Papers, bills, old books, and messy folders were scattered everywhere. As she gathered up a pile to toss out, a brown envelope slipped out from under a stack of old newspapers. Curious, she flipped through it. It was a tech magazine from last month. One she didn't remember buying. Maybe someone left it behind. She flipped it open, ready to toss it, but then her eyes froze. A nearly full-page photo. A man in a sharp gray suit, striking features, calm eyes. The headline below it read, Elliot Renard, young CEO of Ravia Tech, vanishes without a trace after data scandal shakes the industry. Lena's chest tightened like it was caught in a vice. She froze, eyes locked on the familiar face in the photo. It couldn't be it. The Elliot who was just in her kitchen that morning, arguing about overcooked eggs, laughing at cold coffee. She flipped the page, scanning every word like her life depended on it. A massive data leak scandal. At first blamed on a system glitch, until internal evidence pointed to a deliberate cover-up. Elliot Renard, co-founder and CEO of Ravia Tech, vanished just days after the board temporarily suspended him. Lena dropped the magazine, her face flushed hot, then cold. It felt like someone had poured ice water straight into her chest. Part of her wanted to march into the kitchen and confront him, demand the truth. But another part didn't want to know. She just wanted to hold on to that Elliot, the one who did the dishes carefully, who made rice with the last egg in the fridge, who brewed tea when she was too tired to speak. The door opened. Elliot stepped in, holding a bag of oranges. I saw this old lady selling them down the alley, he said. You like sour ones, right? She didn't answer. He looked up. What's wrong? Lena held up the magazine, said nothing. His eyes dropped to the photo, then back to her face. No panic, no denial. It's you? She asked. He nodded. It's me. She tossed the magazine onto the table. Are you kidding me? How long? Did you know from the beginning what you were hiding? You let me believe you were just some broke homeless guy who needed help, when in reality, I never said I didn't have a past. But you also didn't say you were a CEO who vanished after a national scandal. Elliot stayed silent. His eyes didn't avoid hers, but they didn't plead either. Calm, in a way that only made her angrier. What are you hiding? Why are you even here? Why my diner? Why? There was no plan, he said. I'd been wandering for days. Then it rained. I was hungry. I was tired. I sat under that awning, and you handed me a cold lunchbox. You think I'm stupid? No, I think you're kind. Lena bit her lip. Her throat tightened. She turned away. Lena? Don't say my name. She walked into her room and slammed the door. For the first time since he arrived, she locked it. That night she couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, his face flickered back. Sometimes as the tech prodigy praised in headlines as the city's youngest genius CEO. Sometimes as the man standing next to her in the kitchen, tasting a stir-fry that was too salty. The next morning, Elliot still got up early, brewed coffee, set it gently on the table. No questions, no explanations, just left it there. Lena stayed cold. She left for work without a word, came home without a glance. By Tuesday night, after her shift, she came back to find the kitchen light still on. But he was gone. A note sat on the table. I'm sorry for not telling you sooner. It wasn't to deceive you. I just didn't want to become the person I used to be again. If you need space, I'll go. But I hope one day you'll ask me, not to accuse me, but because you want to understand. E. She read the note 3 times, then sank into the chair. The emptiness hit faster than she expected. Because the anger, it was gone. What replaced it was a strange kind of sadness, like she'd just missed something, or someone had really left. She looked around the room. The chair where he used to read, The lamp he once fixed, the crooked picture frame, now perfectly straight. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Then her eyes landed on the laptop. She opened it. The screen lit up to her CV, the version Elliot had fixed. Neat, complete, clear, put together with the same quiet care he gave everything. For the first time in years, Lena looked at her resume and thought, this actually means something. She rested her head in her hands, eyes stinging. She didn't know if it was from frustration, sadness, or missing him. Maybe all of it, all at once. And the thing that hurt the most wasn't that Elliot had once been a CEO, but the real ache was that even after knowing who he was, she still wasn't sure she wanted him to leave. At that point, Lena had caught feelings for Elliot, the kind that slowly, quietly become love. If you felt that too, drop a yes in the comments. 3 days after Elliot left, Lena still hadn't sent out a single job application. Each morning, she'd open her laptop, stare at the finished CV, then close it again. She blamed it on her mood, but deep down she knew it wasn't exhaustion. It was the absence of someone who used to sit beside her, someone who reminded her she deserved to try. Wednesday night, rain. She was just getting ready for bed when she heard a knock. Soft, steady, not the kind of knock a stranger makes. Her heart sped up. She walked over, cracked the door open. Elliot stood there, no umbrella, coat soaked through, water dripping onto the floor. His shirt clung to his body, defined, lean lines across his chest and back. Not showy, but enough to throw her off. His eyes calm, familiar, her heart offbeat again. "What do you want?" she asked, voice cool but not hard. "To talk," he said. Lena hesitated, then opened the door fully. Elliot stepped inside. The familiar air seemed to wrap around them both. He didn't move to take off his coat, didn't sit, just stood there, dripping quietly. "Thanks for not locking the door this time. I still have questions, and I'm ready to answer." Lena crossed her arms. "Start." Elliot exhaled like he'd been holding it for weeks. "I didn't run away. I disappeared to stop Ravia from being sold off. The company I co-founded is being manipulated from the inside. Someone I used to trust, my managing partner, has been signing fake contracts, harvesting user data, then funneling profits through shell companies overseas. You couldn't go to the police or the press? As a CEO fresh off a scandal, anything I said would have sounded like an excuse. I tried contacting the board. They shut me out. Their plan was to keep me gone as long as possible, let the whole story fade. So you quietly disappeared? Just wandered the streets?" Elliot nodded. "I needed to see things from the outside, without eyes on me. I had to gather evidence without showing my face." Lena sat down silent. Her hands clenched tightly in her lap. "You have every right to be angry," he said softly. "I stayed silent too long, but you should know I never meant to take advantage of your kindness." "Then why me?" "I didn't choose," he said. "You showed up, you handed me a lunchbox, and for the first time in months, I felt like someone saw me as just a person." Lena looked up. There was nothing performative in his face, just a man trying to hold on to the last thing that made him believe in someone. "You came back to tell old stories?" she asked. "No, I came back because I need help." She frowned. "Help? You're applying to Triox, right?" She nodded slowly. "How do you know that?" "I saw the email when I fixed your network. Triox is one of the intermediary firms Ravi has been quietly funneling deals through. I need someone on the inside to find the internal financial planning files, confirm a string of digital signatures." Lena froze. "You mean spying?" "I mean doing what's right, even if it's risky," Elliot said. "If I can get evidence from the inside, I might convince a few board members to reopen the internal investigation." "And if I get caught?" Lena asked. "I don't have lawyers like you. I don't have money. I don't have a name that protects me." "I know," he said quietly. The room went still. Lena looked at him. Really looked at him, maybe for the first time. This was the man who fixed her kitchen light with a broken screwdriver. The man who folded napkins like he was folding pieces of memory. The man now laying down the truth and handing her a dangerous choice. "Are you sure this is the right thing?" she asked softly. "Never been more sure." "And what do you need from me?" "Just access. Get into their system. Pull a few data files. No tampering, no interference. Just observe. I'll handle the rest." "This isn't just about the company," she said. "You're trying to make up for something. Aren't you?" Elliot nodded. I lost a lot because I trusted the wrong people, but I'm not ready to lose the chance to make it right. Lena stood, walked to the shelf. She pulled out the printed copy of her updated CV, folded it carefully, and slipped it into her bag, then turned to face him. "You were right about one thing," she said. "What's that?" "I used to live just to survive, but maybe now I'm ready to live for something bigger." Elliot didn't say a word, but his eyes lit up, not with triumph, but with trust. She stepped toward the door. "My interview's tomorrow. If I get the job, I'll start soon." "And if you don't," she smiled, "then I'll find another way. I don't quit halfway." Elliot nodded. Not just any nod, but the kind you give when you hear a real promise. When he left the apartment that night, Lena stood by the window and watched him go. The rain had stopped. Only droplets clung to the glass, like memories still waiting to dry. She placed a hand over her chest. Her heart beat fast, not from fear. For the first time, she knew exactly where she stood and who she was standing with. And that weight, it wasn't light, but it had never felt clearer. Just over a week after her interview, Lena officially became a temporary employee at Triox, assigned to the systems engineering department. Everything moved so fast she barely had time to process it. All she knew was the uneasy mix in her chest, part nerves, part adrenaline, like walking a tightrope strung between two skyscrapers. That night, Elliot showed up at her door again, this time dry, neat in a button-up shirt, hair combed, holding a floor plan in one hand. Strategy meeting. Thursday. Location Triax headquarters, B2 room, tech floor. Agenda, data sharing collaboration with an undisclosed partner. That's the meeting you want me to get into? Not just attend. Record it. And if possible, download the presentation plan. Lena let out a breath. "You really think I can pull this off?" "You're the only one who can get in without raising flags," Elliot said. They'd never see a part-time girl with a quiet face as a threat. "Then they're seriously underestimating me," Elliot smiled, the first real smile in days. And just like that, she didn't feel so alone. Thursday. The sky was still dark when Lena walked into the building. She wore an oversized white button-up, hair tied high, earbuds in, just another office worker blending into the background. In her bag, a pen-shaped recorder. On her keychain, a USB drive the size of a thumbnail. She paused outside the meeting room, took a deep breath. Part of her feared being caught. But a bigger part feared not doing enough to clear Elliot's name. Inside, senior executives chatted in low voices. The lighting was soft, but the air was tight, like a stretched wire ready to snap. At the head of the table sat a tall man with slicked-back hair, sharp suit, and metal-rimmed glasses, Victor Lang, vice president of Ravia, and the one person Elliot once trusted most. Lena stepped in, holding an HDMI cable. "Here to check the projector connection," she said casually. No one looked twice. She plugged in the cable, switched on the recording device, and triggered the cache file transfer. Less than 30 seconds. Her heart pounded, but her hands didn't shake. Victor spoke, his voice low and steady. "Today's meeting will proceed without the CEO. As you all know, Elliot is still unreachable." Someone across the table chimed in. "There's talk he's gathering evidence to file a countersuit." Victor let out a dry chuckle. "Rumors, we followed protocol. Everything's transparent. Nothing to worry about." Just then, the door at the back of the room swung open. A familiar voice cut through the tension. "Is that so?" Everyone turned. Elliot walked in. Black suit, straight posture, eyes steady. Behind him, two men in plain clothes followed. One a lawyer, the other a representative from the board of shareholders. The room fell silent. Victor shot up from his seat. "You have no right to be here." "I have more right than anyone in this room," Elliot replied. "And I have evidence." He nodded toward Lena, who had just unplugged the USB drive from the projector port. Elliot stepped forward and placed the recording device on the center of the table. "A recording of this meeting, where you, Victor Lang, admit the CEO is unreachable, despite personally signing the unauthorized suspension order and working with Triox to build a shell company network to launder user data." Victor's face flushed red. "Outrageous." Elliot opened a file on his laptop. A recording of Victor's voice discussing how to strip encryption from user data and sell it to a third party. The room stirred. Whispers. One executive pulled out his phone. Another slid in earbuds, checking the file that had just hit their inbox, sent by Lena, exactly 2 minutes earlier. Victor glanced around, voice rising. This is a setup. This isn't a setup, Elliot cut in. This is the truth, and I'm not letting you bury it again. The lawyer stepped forward, placing an official summons on the table. Per the board's confidentiality clauses and governance protocols, Mr. Lang is hereby suspended effective immediately. Victor gave a sharp, bitter laugh, but his face had gone pale. No one came to his defense. Suspicious glances shifted into quiet avoidance. Elliot turned to Lena. Their eyes met. No words were spoken, but in that look, Lena felt it. A quiet, unwavering thank you. The meeting ended. Elliot stood in the hallway, gazing out through the tall glass windows, where late sunlight finally began to pierce the heavy clouds. Lena walked up beside him. Everyone in there's buzzing. Doesn't matter, he said. What needed to be said was said. You're not mad I sent the email blast without asking first? On the contrary, you handled it better than I expected. She looked at him for a long moment. So, you've been cleared. Not completely, but at least I'm done hiding. And what now? What are you gonna do? He paused for a few seconds. I'm not sure yet. But this time I'm not disappearing. Lena nodded. Good. A soft breeze swept through the hallway, cold but strangely comforting. Lena folded her arms, eyes drifting toward the skyline. You know, she said, we actually make a pretty good team. Elliot turned to her. I know. Maybe. Too good. He laughed. A quiet, genuine sound. Then, without a word, he stepped just a little closer. Not enough to crowd her, just enough that his warmth reached her folded arms. Lena felt it, her heart skipping to a rhythm that wasn't quite familiar. Amid the meetings, the tension, the betrayals, this moment felt impossibly still. Peaceful, in the most unexpected way. Nearly 3 months after that fateful meeting, the name Elliot Renard had faded from the noisy headlines of the tech world. The media had moved on, to new scandals, new drama, as they always did. But the most unexpected story didn't come from the news. It came from Elliot himself. He declined the offer to return as CEO. No big speech, no press conference, just a brief letter sent to Ravia's entire engineering team, thanking them for the years they'd built together. Then, quietly, he walked away from the tech world. Lena heard the news while she was organizing books in the small shop she had just opened. The shop was called Moonlight Books, tucked on a quiet street corner beside an old couple's pastry shop. Lena had spent a full month repainting the walls, picking out chairs, arranging shelves, and hanging a small wooden sign in the front window. We believe in stories that heal. When the news came that Elliot had officially stepped away from Ravia, she didn't say anything. She just sat still for a moment, then set her phone down and went back to wiping an old photo frame on the shelf. A picture of her and her late grandmother, the woman who once dreamed of opening a small bookstore just like this. Lena smiled. Maybe sometimes leaving the top is the only way to return to where you truly belong. Elliot, too? No one knew where he went, not even Lena. They kept in touch for a few weeks after everything. A few lines now and then, a shared song, a photo of coffee in a chipped cup. Then the messages slowed. Not because of a fight, but because the distance between them no longer felt like something they needed to fill with words. It needed time. It needed quiet. And then, on a soft sunny day with a light breeze, as Lena was folding a children's book to place in a gift basket, she received a short email. No subject line. Just this. If one day you find yourself walking through a small town down south, don't skip the cafe on 4th Street corner. They have something on the menu called New Start. I think you'd like it. She read it twice. No signature, but she knew exactly who it was from. That weekend, Lena caught an early bus. She didn't tell anyone. Didn't bring much, just a small backpack, a notebook, and the old wool scarf he once used to wipe down her kitchen counter. The small southern town was quieter than she'd imagined. Wooden houses, low trees, no tall buildings, no glowing billboards. A breeze carried the smell of fresh pastries from a bakery near the station. She walked, following the directions. 4th Street, left corner at the end. The sign out front was a charred-edged piece of wood, hand-carved with crooked letters. New Start, coffee, pastries, and sometimes second chances. Her heart gave a small, quiet ache. The wooden door opened with a soft jingle. Inside, the cafe was modest. 3 raw wood tables, a small bookshelf tucked in the corner, a few sketch drawings hung casually on the walls. The counter was simple, clean. The smell of freshly roasted coffee filled the air. and behind the counter was him. Rolled up sleeves, slightly tousled hair, and that same smile, not eager, not forced. Just the kind of smile someone wears when they're no longer running. Lena stood still for a few seconds, then stepped inside, her fingers tightening slightly around her bag strap. "Welcome," Elliot said, his voice calm and low. "Did you wander in by accident?" "No," she replied. "I came looking for something special." "Oh yeah?" he asked. "What's that?" "New start," he smiled. "We're out of stock, but there's an open seat at the counter. Want it?" She walked over and sat down. The cafe was still and quiet. Just the soft clink of a spoon against a glass, the gentle pour of hot water over coffee grounds, and her heartbeat, steady, deliberate, unhurried. "How long's it been?" she asked. 2 months, opened 4 weeks ago." "You don't find it strange, going from CEO to making coffee?" "Not strange," he said, "just different. But at least now I know the people who pass through my life, know who takes more milk, who skips the sugar, know you still like the seat by the window. That's enough." Lena didn't answer right away. She looked around, at the half-painted wooden wall, at the old bookshelf in the corner, at the cup of hot milk coffee placed in front of her, just the way she liked it. Same taste, same glass, same quiet care. Then she looked at him. "So what's the plan?" she asked. "I'm living it. And if I hadn't walked down this street," he smiled, "then I'd still leave a cup waiting, every morning." She let out a soft laugh. A breeze drifted through the cafe, gently lifting the small curtain by the window. She took a sip of her coffee. Hot, just sweet enough, and somehow it did taste like something new. Something light, but steady. "You still have that old kitchen rag?" she asked. "Still do. Hanging by the stove. Smells like burnt toast and cheap dish soap." "Smells like the beginning," she said. They looked at each other. No need for more words, because sometimes a new beginning doesn't come with fireworks or fanfare. Sometimes it's just a breezy afternoon, a cup of warm coffee, a shared look between two people who once understood each other and still want to stay long enough to understand more. On the quiet corner at the end of the street, the New Start sign swayed gently in the wind. And inside, a very real, very human love story was unfolding, quietly, but never faint. Lena and Elliot's story didn't end with a wedding or a sky full of fireworks. It ended with a warm cup of coffee, a shared look of understanding, and a quiet peace, just enough to begin again together. Because sometimes love doesn't need to be loud. It just needs the right person, the right moment, and the courage to stay. So what about you? Do you love gentle love stories like Lena and Elliot's? Or do you prefer something bold, fiery, and intense? Let us know in the comments. And if this story touched something in your heart, don't forget to hit subscribe to Love Stories so you won't miss more quiet, surprising, and deeply real moments like this one. We'll see you in the next story.